throughout my career, and that's on women in leadership and that journey, how you become a key player in an organization that's predominantly male. So I'm very comfortable with that because I experience that every day. I call it military row, and if you can look, even with the addition of my best friend, every single one of those gentlemen on that row have been in the military. So I call it military row where I work. I will say that through the challenges that we often face in the workplace or at home, but particularly for me in the workplace as a female, as a woman, I have a core team that we are very, I'm trying to put this delicately because I have to go back to the office with them. So, but they are very supportive. We are all very passionate, but they are very respectful. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the support that they've given me here today. You know, Ronnie read the bio that I am proud of, but it's not the one that means the most to me. It talks about the achievements that I've made throughout my career. It talks about the oversight that I have. But the one that means the most to me is the one that is deeply rooted in my upbringing in Southern Georgia. And I'm just going to read a little bit of that to you today because that is really the overall theme of what I'm going to speak to today, is really to talk about how and why I'm here and how I was able to get here. So I grew up in a small town in Georgia. I was raised by both parents. Both parents did not graduate high school. I developed extensive experience in sales at an early age. For several months during the summer, I sold icy cups from the back door of my family's apartment in Bay Acres. We call it an apartment, but to the rest of the world, it was referred to as the Black Projects. You have the white projects, you have the black projects. I lived in the black projects. I lost my business after only 2 months because it became very lucrative, so you would ask, why did I lose it? There was a hostile takeover by an unlikely adversary, my dad. He saw that I was making money and he took over the business of selling the icy cups for me, right? My dad. I have experience working in restaurants such as Burger King and also at McDonald's. I spent 2 weeks at McDonald's and that's when I realized this is totally not for me. I gotta do something different. I also have experience as a gardener. I became an expert doing my 1 week stint in what is called the bean field. Anyone in Roland, Georgia, it is what is called the bean field. That was the modern day, instead of cotton, it was beans. I learned lifelong skills such as leadership and hard work from a lady that was a staple in the community. Her name was Miss Clary. Miss Clary, I think she was 90 at the time that she may have been 60. She just always seemed old, and it wasn't because of her outer appearance. It was more because of the depth, the knowledge, just the history and the richness and the experiences and what she had to give to the community. She was an elder lady who had worked in the fields. Mrs. Clary had worked in the bean field, the tobacco field, and the cotton field all her life. That's the only thing that she knew. Ms. Clary was also responsible for mobilizing the community to make sure that individuals would have skills to be able to earn a living when other jobs were not often available to us. Ms. Clary taught me that it was important to apply and learn to apply my skills and to also develop many talents. Ms. Clary spoke based on experience as she had worked in cotton fields, tobacco fields, and bean fields all her life. Ms. Clary taught me leadership skills. She demonstrated this by rounding people up in the community, looking for work and recruiting them to join in the fields. Ms. Clary was a staple in the community. Again, she was the one person in the entire community, and my town was very small, that would always look to see how do we bring people together. She didn't look at those jobs the only jobs that she was able to get as the meaning, because that's all she knew her entire life. With the assistance of Ms. Thomas and Ms. Locklin, I graduated from Wayne County High School, went on to Bowie State University, where I became pregnant at a very young age. I left college to get a job and raise my son. I later worked at Citizens Bank before beginning a career as a clerk in the federal government with General Services Administration. That is my bio. That is the true me. That's the essence of who I am. You ask, or you may be thinking, the bean field, I graduated school in, I'm not gonna tell you, but I graduated school not too long ago. And you may ask yourself, how in 1988 do you have a young woman that's working in the bean field, the modern day cotton field? Those were the only jobs that were available to us. So, it wasn't that there weren't jobs. Those are the only jobs that they would give us. So in the bean field, next to me are my classmates. Having the ability to work summer jobs at the local banks, to work summer jobs in a doctor's office, dental office, that was just simply not available. The list that we would receive would be a list that gave the hours that the truck would come by to pick everyone up to be able to work the bean field. And then I didn't learn until later on that, the money that we would make at the bean field, because we had worked all day and was very tired and hungry, that the driver would stop off at the store right on the outskirts of the bean field. The store was owned by the individual that we were working for on the bean field. So the money that we just earned, I quickly gave it back because I stopped by to get candy or to get some water or something until I was able to get home. So I spent 1 week there, and I had a conversation with my mom, and I said, I don't like it. And she says, well, there's nothing, what else is there for you to do? I mean, these are the jobs, so you got a job, you can make extra money during the summer and be self-sufficient. And I said, I don't like it. And I said, she said, what do you mean? I don't like it, not because I feel that it's hard work. I don't like the way that it makes me feel. I don't like getting on a truck with 20 to 30 people, going off down a dirt road, picking up barrels, leaning over all day, and picking beans. There has to be a better way. So that was my last week there. My friends went back because that was their source of income. I began to do things a little bit differently. And that's when my Icy Cup business was born. I say that because for me, as one of the 10% in the department, this story would tell you or lead you to believe, if I was not standing here, that I should not be here. So how am I able to be here? I'm here because there were thousands that sacrificed their lives, their dignity for me. There were thousands that lost their jobs, that lost their homes on the plantations, fighting for the right to vote. That's why I'm able to be here. So the pain that I felt that 1 week, in comparison, doesn't even come close. So when we talk about African American History Month and we talk about voting, it doesn't matter who you're voting for. What matters is that you understand that the vote that you're about to cast is not just a vote for the future, but it's gratitude for the past. So when I have conversations with my son, he's anti every government, anti everything. He believes that all government is corrupt except for mom. right? Yeah, and I'm thinking, well, government has resourced you over the last 26 years, but okay, I got it, right? So he is, he is a young fella. He is a free spirit. I'm quite sure some of us in this room have some of those. He is a free spirit. He believes in everything except for the government. But when I had the conversation with my son about the importance of voting, and he felt that his vote didn't count. It doesn't matter because we don't control anything. I quickly had to remind him that if Fannie Lou Hamer, a powerful African-American woman who sacrificed her life, beatings, spending days in a jail cell, beaten by the authorities, spending days in a jail cell when other African-American men that were in that jail cell were ordered to beat her until they were tired. But she still continued to press on. So if Fannie Lou Hamer, Martin Luther King, and others can press on, giving us the opportunity to be able to cast the ballot, giving me the opportunity to be an SCS in the Department of Homeland Security, then you're telling me that the vote didn't count? I don't think so. I don't think so. So my background, the scars that I have may tell my story, but they don't tell how my story ends. The journey that I've endured may speak to that of someone that should be somewhere else, but as you can see, we come from a mighty people. The strength that I have, based on the experiences and the exposure, and the stories from my mom, tells me that I have a right to be here. I have a right to be here. I asked my mother, I said, when did you realize the importance of voting? She says, well, it was later on in life, much later. She says, because we lived way out in the country. They still lived on a plantation, free, but they still lived at the outskirts, right on the end, the corner of the plantation owner's home, land. And you wouldn't dare talk about voting. You couldn't dare talk about anything that would demonstrate that you were trying to move forward. And voting was one of those. It was taboo, but it was those things that we would discuss in church, because that's our place of safety, that's our place of comfort. So my mom said she voted for the first time when she was literally maybe 22 years old. And she said she still didn't know what she was voting for. She didn't know why she was voting. She didn't understand the importance. But what she did understand is that everyone in the community were having conversations about the importance of voting and how that would give them the right to have an education. That would give them access to better education. That would give them access to better jobs. She didn't have the details, but she knew that it was the opportunity to make a difference. So she loaded up in the cars. Mr. James Copeland was the key political figure in our community, and they all went to the polls. After leaving, they began to cry. Not crying because they had cast their first vote, but crying because they weren't killed on the way to the polls. So for me, when I look at the opportunities that are before me, when I look at my past, I am honored. It's a privilege to have the opportunity to be able to cast my vote and to be able to cast my vote for whomever I want. So as you go through this month and you get into November and you say that it doesn't count, What are you saying to the thousands and thousands that have lost their lives, helping you to get to the polls? When we have the conversations with our kids, don't dismiss their ideals, because we need their energy for the future. And when you have the conversation with the elderly, don't dismiss their ideals, because we need their wisdom. Every vote absolutely counts. I'm going to leave you with this. On your way to the ballot, someone approaches and attempts to do you harm. You say, give it your best shot. My ancestors have endured much more. You can cast a mighty blow, and I may stumble, but before I hit the ground, there are thousands that have fallen before me with their hands in the air to catch me before I hit the ground. So as you go through your day at work and the challenges that you face, understand that there's so much that has occurred to get you to this point that you have the power to endure. Thank you.